Hello and welcome. My name is Mallory DeMay and I'm going to be the host for this session. Thank you for joining us for Preventing Plagiarism, Strategies for Reducing Academic Dishonesty Incidents in the Classroom. And now please welcome our presenters, Sherry Schwartz and Adam Goischmidt.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us here today. As Mallory mentioned, we are going to be discussing the topic of plagiarism. Let me make sure I got my screen displayed here. Hopefully everyone can see that. If not, Mallory or someone can let me know. But just a little bit of background information before we formally get started here today. The genesis of this original research project was that Sherry and I have been a part of the Student Success and Retention Committee in COLA. And at the beginning of the year, we established some various different initiatives, and the one that Sherry and I decided to take upon was the issue of plagiarism and trying to investigate how large of a problem this is here at Ashford and begin to develop some ways to not only curtail it, but help educate our students better so that we can hopefully see a decrease in the number of incidences in plagiarism moving forward, because it is a serious issue. And unfortunately, given the nature of online education, it kind of lends itself to it happening just as much, if not more often, than in traditional universities. So for our presentation today, obviously due to some recent circumstances, the presentation will take on a little bit different of a approach than originally planned, but the purpose of this will be to kind of give you an overview of some data that has been collected on plagiarism recently here at Ashford to give a sense of what the nature or the size of the scope of the problem is. I'll also be talking about some different reasons why students tend to choose to plagiarize or commit academic dishonesty. And then in the second half of the presentation, Sherry's going to discuss some approaches that both currently exist and that instructors can use in order to help educate their students more about these issues and hopefully help teach them how to properly cite work and prevent plagiarizing work moving forward. One last thing before I begin, I don't know if they're here with us today, but there are three other individuals who throughout the course of the year as we were working on this initiative were very instrumental either in helping us obtain data or offering us some research and help on this, and that is Jeff Meyerholz, Mindy Sloan, and Jennifer Dunn. So we greatly appreciate all the work that they did to help not only get this presentation together, but just help us in understanding the situation as it relates to plagiarism here at Ashford. So let me begin by just giving you an overview of the number of incident reports that have been submitted to the university over the past 8 years. As you can see here, there was a steady increase in the number of reports up until last year. Hopefully this is a positive sign, but there are certainly a number of different contextual variables that can play a factor into why we saw a decrease in the number of reports submitted in 2018, including a drop in enrollment, a change in faculty teaching courses, and just a greater awareness. So there are both positive and negative reasons why such a decrease was seen, but hopefully we'll continue to see a decrease moving forward. Looking specifically at 2018, here's the breakdown of the number of, or the different types of incidents that we saw. 2,290 of the reported incidents were a situation where it was the student's first offense, 612 were their second offense, and 139 cases were where the student had committed at least 3 different incidents of plagiarism or academic dishonesty. It is at that point when they are brought forward to the standards board, and I'll talk a little bit more about what the standards board does in hopes of trying to curtail plagiarism for students who have multiple violations. Also, This is not always the case of plagiarism. In some cases, it's more collusion. In 2018, 30 of the reported incidents were cases of collusion where students had worked together to basically share or reuse each other's papers. And then 271 of the incidents were cases where simply no citations were found or included in the student's work. Specifically in COLA, we see that like across the university, there was a decrease from 2017 to 2018 in terms of the number of incidents. You can see on the chart here both a breakdown of incidents for our bachelor students as well as for our master's students. I don't like seeing still that many number of incidents when they're getting to the master's program or graduate work, but the fact that those incidents do exist shows you just why it's so important to not only raise awareness on this issue, but to do so early on, so that way by the time they reach graduate level, they're not plagiarizing work. Here's a quarter by quarter breakdown within COLA between 2017 and 2018. Again, it's difficult to really draw any clear conclusions from this data because there are so many different contextual variables that could contribute to why you see an increase or a decrease of incidences being reported from quarter to quarter. Here also is the data quarter by quarter for the master's program as well. So again, I just want to kind of give you a general sense as to what the situation is here. In terms of the courses that were most often found to have incidences of academic dishonesty in them, in both 2017 and 2018, Political Science 303 ended up having the most number of cases. Now, again, there may be something about the nature of that course that lends itself to students plagiarizing, but it also may simply be a case of who the instructors are that are teaching those courses and how vigilant they are about looking for plagiarism and then reporting it if incidences do happen. Beyond that, there's not a lot of consistency. We do see some sociology courses and criminal justice courses pop up in both years as well. This was, I thought, perhaps one of the most interesting pieces of data that we collected looking at 2018. On the left there, the pie chart you see is the total number of courses that were taught in COLA and what percentage of them were taught by full-time faculty. As you can see here, almost 85% of the courses were taught by a full-time faculty member. And interestingly, when you look at the number of instances that reported, it's almost identical. So almost 86% of the total number of incidences reported were done by full-time faculty members here. This is a positive piece of information in terms of we're seeing our full-time faculty being dedicated to identifying and looking for instances of plagiarism, but we want to make sure that all of our instructors, whether they're associate faculty members or not, are looking to make sure that their students are not being dishonest in their work. Now, this is pretty much the same chart as what we began with the exception of we now also add in the Q1 data in terms of the number of incidences being reported. And you'll see here 714 thus far in the first quarter for 2019, which is about 21% of the total number of incidences reported in 2018. So hopefully that would suggest that the number will go down again for the entire academic year. However, as we saw in some of those quarterly breakdowns, it's not always necessarily a consistent number from quarter to quarter. So we'll see by the end of the year whether or not the number of incidences reported will have gone down or not. Lastly, here in terms of the data, you see a breakdown of the number of incidences being reported by academic programs. The two highest programs are Ford School of Business and Gen Ed, but all of the schools really do see some incidences being reported, including the doctoral program. So we want to make sure that we continue to stay on top of this, because it's a situation that is seen across the board in all different academic programs here. So then why do students plagiarize? For the past 2 years, I've been a part of the standards board, which hears cases when students have been found guilty of academic dishonesty for at least 3 different instances. And it's been very enlightening to be able to be a part of that standards board and to hear all the different situations. A lot of the students will be able to explain when they're brought up on standards what exactly is the reason why they committed multiple infractions like this. And inevitably, I hear different stories each time. And I think each of the different stories kind of lends itself to helping us better understand the nature of this problem, as well as what we can do to address it. So let me discuss just some of the different ways or the explanations I have heard from students over the years. In some cases, unfortunately, we do see a deliberate attempt by the student to commit academic dishonesty or cheat. They fully admit that they found their paper on Course Hero or some sort of other site and chose that they thought they wouldn't get caught, so they just decided to take the easy way out and use someone else's paper. It's unfortunate. I appreciate the honesty later on that they're willing to admit that that's what they did. But because these sites exist where copies of students' papers that have been written in the past are available, we want to obviously make sure we're careful in watching to make sure that students are not using other people's work, especially if you can use the Turnitin service that is included in Waypoint. In some cases, it's due to result of a lack of time or some sort of personal issues going on in the student's life. I often hear cases where they've got a sick student, or excuse me, a sick child, or they've got stresses at work, or they're getting a divorce. They've got a lot else going on in their life. And while they recognize the fact that what they did was wrong, they simply did not have the time they felt they needed to write the paper themselves, so they chose to either copy large portions from another source, or simply use a Course Hero paper and pass it off as their own. We also have some cases where it's simply a lack of knowledge in terms of what constitutes plagiarism. So some students admit that they did not realize they were doing anything wrong. Now, to a certain degree, it's hard to believe when they have multiple incidents that they haven't learned it, but we do see cases where a student thinks that they are citing outside sources and they are copying directly, but do not think that what they're doing is considered plagiarism. So in those cases, we often require the student to get some sort of training in order to better understand what constitutes plagiarism and what they need to be doing in order to cite a source correctly. Similar but slightly different is when they have a lack of knowledge on proper citation formatting. So whether they are required to be using APA, MLA, or one of the other forms of formatting their sources, they for instance, will perhaps put an in-text citation at the end, but they haven't put quotation marks around a direct quote, in which case Turnitin is going to still flag their content as being an example of plagiarism, and they simply just didn't know how to use the APA format or MLA format in order to cite their work correctly. So on these last two, education is really key, and we wanted to make sure that students are getting proper training and information, especially early on when they first come here to Ashford, to make sure that they understand what they need to do in order to properly cite the work that they're using from outside sources. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Sherry now, and she's going to take some time to discuss both what instructors can do and what services are available currently through Ashford in order to help our instructors educate our students a little bit better about these issues of plagiarism.
Can you guys hear me? I'm hoping. It told me that I was on mute, and I think I might be cutting out. Are you guys able to hear me? Let me look at the chat. Yay. Hey, Pam, how are you? Yeah, so as Adam pointed out, one of the things that always to me on the student community standards hearings is that the vast majority of the students really truly are students who are struggling with understanding precisely what constitutes plagiarism. And so, as Adam was talking about, we were also part of the COLA Student Success and Retention Committee and trying to come up with potential studies, strategies, the student a little bit better, and how to help them. And in doing that and reaching out to people like Jeff Meyerholtz and Mindy Sloan, we were able to come up with the data that gives us a full picture of exactly what's happening with plagiarism, but also with these pretty nifty, in my opinion, modules that can be helpful to students. And ever since they shared these with us a few months ago, I've started incorporating these when I come across students who arguably are plagiarizing. And so this one that I want to share with you guys is, let me see, I did put the link in the chat in case anybody wants to see it. Let me share that with you guys in case you kind of want to follow along. But that will give you the link to these, and these are interactive modules. And so, of course, look, it's pretty universal. The students know that if you cut and paste from sources, or of course, if you just take entire papers from other places, that is cheating. That they don't struggle with, but where they struggle is with the more nuanced areas, such as understanding how to paraphrase. And so just to give you guys an example, one of the things that I will share with students, sometimes they do it in an announcement, but again, you know, students, sometimes they don't see all the announcements. Our students are very busy. They have 1 to 2 discussions to do per week. They have usually a paper to do each week. They're working, they're caring for their families. So they don't always have time to invest in this. So often where I try to plug this in is when I have a situation where there has been some plagiarism, and I'll include a link to it in their feedback. Sometimes depending on how much support I think they need based on the work that's being turned in, I'll message them and say, hey, you know, let's set up a time to chat by phone. I want to share this link with you and kind of walk through it a little bit with you. And the students seem to appreciate it. They come back usually with feedback that, you know, I didn't really realize this. I understood that I couldn't cut and paste, but I changed some words around. And so I'll start with this one where it gives them the opportunity to walk through and identify. And so if you choose an answer that's incorrect, it gives you that nifty little, you know, no, you're wrong. And then of course, when you're correct, you get, you know, the trumpets. And then it walks you through. At the end of the modules, I'm not gonna, you guys can walk yourselves through. I'm kind of a geek. I have way too much fun with this stuff, but I'm gonna show you a couple of others that I found helpful. But at the end, the students can also get a certificate of completion, some evidence if you want to say to them, hey, I'll give you a second crack at that paper, but I really need you to do this module. And once you do that module, send me the proof that you completed it, and, you know, just tell me a little bit about what your experience was with it. Did you enjoy it? Do you feel that you learned from it? And then the students get a little more out of it. This is another one of my favorites that I share. And all of these are fantastic. I really don't want to downplay any of these. This one in particular is one of my, you can see that I use these, is one of my pet peeves. Siri's talking to me, sorry guys. And so this one is paraphrasing, practice activity. And this is fantastic because really what we find is, as Adam said, is basically that students are really not understanding that if you only change around a few words, that's not really, that's not paraphrasing at all, as a matter of fact. And so this is an interactive activity where they can see a paragraph of text, and then they get to choose the student who best paraphrases it. And so Susan didn't paraphrase properly. Right? And so if I'm choosing Susan, then I have to now take a look at these other two, Timothy and Jordan, and see, okay, so what happened here, right? And so now I'm down to Jordan, and this takes me on to my next question. So these, this one especially, it's a little more involved. It takes the students a little bit longer, but they really, I find they're really benefiting from this. And I do try to encourage gently the use of this one at the beginning of the class. Again, not everybody's going to do it, but I will use Civitas to send this out so that each student's getting an individual email from me, as though I'm saying from me to that particular student, hey, you know, I'm sure you've been doing great in your classes. Congratulations on your great work so far. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to do this, but I find that students who take a few minutes and do this activity tend to be a little more successful in my class. And once you do it, send me your certificate that you completed it, you know, and if you want to talk about it, you have any questions, let me know. Most of the students get back to me with their certificates of completion, and you know, it is helpful to them. So I'm running into fewer high percentage Turnitin reports. Another one that I share with the students is this one. And you can share any of them with the students, but this one is really helpful because one of the things, of course, that we do, at least that I do, when I generate Turnitin reports, if they're high percentage, I do share those with the students and tell them, hey, the highlighted parts are the issue. But I was finding that students still really don't understand why that's the issue. And so, of course,
Hello,
this
and
module,
welcome to this tutorial on how to interpret Turnitin reports.
this module helps them
She just got an email.
understand the Turnitin reports. And again, if the student wants to generate a completion certificate, I always encourage them to do that with the understanding that I can't give them any extra credit for it, but the extra credit really comes in potentially a higher grade and hopefully no issues in terms of plagiarism and not being turned in. Let me see, does anybody have any questions? Because I'm shot out of a cannon here. No questions? Does anyone have any questions? Did you guys know about these already? Yes, so here's Sean. I will share this link right here. Yeah, and so one of the things that Adam and I had hoped to do is, you're welcome, Sean, is to be able to create modules where we could put these in certain classrooms, create a pilot study where we could put certain modules into certain classrooms. So not all of the modules in all the classrooms, but maybe in a given major, put, you know, one module in one course, one module in another course, and have the students have to do it before a specific assignment opened up, and see if that maybe would help curb any of the reports and the misunderstandings about plagiarism. Unfortunately, we didn't get there, but that doesn't mean that we can't use these really well done materials by the Writing Center to help mentor students and coach them and get it out to them, hopefully as a preventative strategy. But when something comes back that's heavily copied or has a high percentage, or it's what I like to call very eloquently thesaurus vomit, it's really about, you know, using it as those proverbial teachable moments. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. I would love to hear any feedback that you have about what you're using in your classrooms, how you think that these materials might work, and any suggestions for potentially a pilot study going into the new year, because I think it would make a great pilot study. These are amazing tutorials, interactive activities that I feel like we could make really good use of and kind of collect some data to see how they're working for us. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending. And I know Dr. Swenson will be speaking here in a few minutes, but I just want to thank Sherry and Adam for your presentation.